Welcome back to Community Matters. When you think of a second language, American Sign Language may not spring to mind. Here to tell us more about it is Ben King, founder, partner of Interpreting Works, providing services to the deaf and hard of hearing in North Carolina. And Ben, it's great to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Bill, thanks for having me on the show.
Well, you have a unique background, and I want to start there with your childhood, how you grew up, and your parents.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
I grew up as the oldest of 4 children to deaf parents. My father became deaf through spinal meningitis, and my mom was deaf congenitally. She has 2 deaf sisters.
Wow. Now, if you don't mind, because I was a kid, and I know what I did as a kid, and I'm sure you were much better than I was. But you could crank the TV as loud as you wanted. That had to be a heck of a life. No one complained, right? And you did? Tell us about it.
Well, there's a funny story I could tell. There was one time when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and at that time, my parents had a doorbell that was connected to the lighting system in the house. So when somebody rang the doorbell, all the lights in every room would flash. And this one particular day, a neighbor had come over and rang the doorbell. I opened it up and saw who it was, and the gentleman says, "I want to talk to your mom and dad." So I went and got my parents. My dad came to the door, and interestingly enough, I was the interpreter for them. And he told my dad, "The TV in here is cranked up way too loud. It needs to be turned down. I can hear it at my house next door."
And how did you interpret that?
Truthfully,
Good.
I think that set the stage for later on in life for my career. And so I interpreted everything that the gentleman had said to my dad, and when the door was closed, my dad gave me what for.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, and you mentioned this is how you kind of got things rolling. But growing up, communicating with your parents, who were deaf, sign language had to become a very important language to learn. Did you learn it? How did you learn it?
And I can't answer that. My mom told me that I started signing at the age of 6 months.
Wow. And then, of course, you created the company Interpreting Works. So let's talk about that. What is that?
Interpreting Works is an agency that I created in order to satisfy interpreting requests, and we have a team of people that work with us, and we provide contractual services to hospitals, to the court system, to various private businesses, and we have a team of interpreters that we schedule and send out for on-site interpreting services.
How big of a need is there for something like that?
When there is a need, it's usually a big need. There are slower times of the year. The summertime is typically slower, but typically throughout the year, school systems that have deaf students that are mainstreamed need interpreters. Local hospitals have emergency rooms or inpatient needs for their patients that are there, and it could be anything that you can imagine.
Well, and I've seen them on TV, obviously, with the governor during emergency situations. Now, you don't teach sign language, do you, or do you? No. So this is basically a career for those who
is a career.
Might be. How difficult, if you don't mind, is it for someone to pick up sign language? Because you had mentioned, I said, well, it's interesting, sign language is a second language. You said that's a matter of perspective.
It is.
For folks who are watching, maybe they never thought that this is something, they could do, and the career opportunities that are afforded them if they chose to do it.
Absolutely. You know, there are different community colleges in the area that provide a 2-year program where you can pick up an interpreter training type classes to prepare you for a career. The UNC system has a 4-year degree program. One that I know of is over in Greensboro, and that really prepares you fairly well for coming out into the community to be able to provide the service.
Now, you kind of touched on some of the careers. Obviously, they can come work for you at some point, and you provide it. And you mentioned there is a need, and I looked at some of the stats, and there's almost 9% of folks in the United States with hearing loss. So I got to imagine, whether it's court or whatever, there's a need for them. What kinds of jobs do you think they might be able to find?
A whole host of things. There's educational interpreting needs, K-12, colleges and universities, and the other one that we split out is called community interpreting, where a doctor's office may call up and say, hey, I've got a patient coming in at this date and this time, we need an interpreter. So we split them out typically as educational interpreters and community interpreters. And then we also have legal interpreters that do courtroom.
Sounds like you're busy. Sounds like you can be very busy doing it. Well, I mean, it was great to meet you. We should go have a sandwich and we can talk about your childhood, because
I could tell you some stories.
I bet you can. How do folks get a hold of you?
Well, the company's Interpreting Works,
Uh-huh.
and we can be reached online, www.interpretingworks.com.
All right, Ben, pleasure. Thank you for taking time for us.
Absolutely.
I
Thanks
appreciate
for having
it.
me.
In fact, thank you for watching Community Matters. We hope you've enjoyed the show. And if you'd like to view previous episodes, you can visit our websites at raleigh-cw.com and myrdctv.com. We'll see you next week on Community Matters.